What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. And Filip Chytil, guys, he's making his return to America. He just traveled back to New York. Peter Laviolette said there's still no timeline on when he will return to the team for practice and hopefully for a game before the season's end. But he did make really solid progress while home, recovering from his concussion. It's been a long bout with this concussion for Filip Chytil. Obviously, there's a great concern around his health and well-being. And of course, before we dive into a discussion about Filip Chytil, we will just say we're hoping and praying that he does recover real soon and thoroughly. We want to see Filip Chytil back out there. We were really enjoying watching him play at the beginning of the season, and we've been pretty high on him for the past couple of years, even, Eric. I mean, like, we've been critical of a lot of players. Of course, we've had our criticisms of Filip Chytil, but we've been pretty positive on him. And so we felt like his absence from this lineup has definitely been felt. And he's a player that when the Rangers get him back, hopefully by the end of the season, he'll make a pretty significant impact. But we want to talk about where will that impact be in today's episode. Will he be the 3C? Will he move up to the first line, play right wing, and finally fill that void for the Rangers? Or could the Rangers potentially consider trading him at the deadline? Now, I'll just go out and say I think that's the least likely outcome of the three. I think that Filip Chytil, once he does return from this injury, I think the Rangers are going to feel compelled to hold on to him and kind of give him a show of good faith for even trying to play this season after returning from that injury. But again, it is worth noting that the Rangers are searching for something more special on that first line. And so Filip Chytil could be one of their most valuable trade pieces if it does come down to it. But we're going to talk about where he's going to play on the lines when he does return from this injury, which again sounds like it could be pretty soon. Not too soon, but soon enough. So getting excited for Filip Chytil's return, and that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. And make sure to go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. Without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what is your reaction to Filip Chytil finally returning to New York to get ready to hopefully play soon in the NHL?
I'm doing good, Anthony. I'm very excited to see Filip Chytil play. You look back at the beginning of the season, the very few amount of games that he played, he hadn't scored a single goal. He had a handful of assists right there. He was playing very well, scoring points, but he was just waiting to score that goal. And after he got injured, which ended up being a concussion, I got a little nervous. I was like, oh, maybe we're not going to see him score that goal this season. But he's apparently gone on this crazy, like, superhero level recovery path where he's traveling the world to rediscover himself. He had to go back home to Europe and Czechia. Now he's coming back to finish off his training. It's like watching The Dark Knight Rises right now. I feel like it's what we're witnessing with Filip Chytil. But overall, I'm glad to see him that he's making these strides and that he's actually has the chance to come back this season. So hopefully when he returns, he's looking just like he did right before he got injured. And Peter Laviolette and Chris Drury, they have a couple of options here because before he was injured, he was playing as the second line center. At this point in the months that Chytil's been gone, Vincent Trocheck has moved into that spot, fully solidified himself there. Trocheck's having like a point per game season, just selected as an NHL All-Star. He's not being moved. So there's got to be a new spot to fit in Filip Chytil, whether it be that third line center. Some might argue that's a little bit of wasted potential. So they could try to move him up into that first line if Kakko starts to not be playing so well up there. Or, as you mentioned, Anthony, if there's really no room for him, you might as well cash in on his value there to at least allow him to have the top six experience elsewhere. But I guess we'll dive right on into it.
Yeah, and I'm ready to dive into it. And what I do want to discuss before we talk about should he be in the top six, the bottom six, I want to ask you your take on should he even return immediately to the NHL. Now, do you think that Filip Chytil is a player that could spend some time down in Hartford? He hasn't played professional hockey in a long time with this injury. It might take him a little while to knock off the rust, get used to playing at a high level again. Do you think it would be wise for the Rangers to kind of let him get his feet wet once again in Hartford, get back into game shape before moving him back up into the NHL?
If you would have asked me that question a few weeks ago, I would have said probably, yeah, that would be a good idea. Because once he returns to the team, he's going to be skating in the red no contact jerseys. Then he'll move to a full participant. And then maybe if Laviolette thought he wasn't 100% ready to go, like 2 or 3 games down in Hartford. But I think based on what we saw with Capo Caco, because we said potentially that could be an option for him too. But no, Peter Laviolette did not consider that. He threw Capo Caco right back into the fire and put him up on that top line. So if he didn't do it with Kako, I'm just going to assume that he wouldn't do it with Chytil, and especially with Chytil's option likely being as the third line center to start off. I don't really see it happening, especially with all of that practice time that he's going to get with the team, and then factoring in the part where the Rangers are really struggling right now and they need players on their team. They kind of want to figure that out as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, I don't think the Rangers have time to give Chytil that like space to get like readjusted to NHL playing time. He needs to just be ready to go as soon as he's deemed healthy enough.
I think, that's a fair argument. I would say I would advocate for him spending some time in Hartford. I think that he could really benefit from having a little bit of a prolonged ramp up period. But like you just mentioned with Kako, he came back right away on the first line. So if the expectation is that Filip Chytil is likely to play on the third line when he is cleared to play and he is back in game shape, as long as the team medical doctors clear him, I think there is a good chance that he does just immediately shoot right back up into the NHL, especially considering Rangers in a rut lately, in a real slump. They need some firepower. They need to pick up some wins. Getting Filip Chytil back, if he is cleared by the doctors and he is playing at a high level, I mean, you want to get him back up there as soon as possible. But let's have the debate now, Eric. 3C or one first line right wing. Where do you think that he fits in better? Because me personally, since I did just mention that I think he could benefit from some time in Hartford, you probably know where I'm leaning. I think that he should definitely start out at least at the 3C. Get him in the bottom six. Don't give him too many minutes. Don't give him such a large amount of time on ice, and kind of just continue to ramp him back up. And honestly, long term, I think that's probably where he fits in for the rest of the season as well. I think the Rangers' bottom six depth has been really shaky this year. We've had a lot of problems with players like Gaudreau. Let's just point him out as an example. I think that having a really quality 3C could really stabilize that bottom six, and that's really what they've been missing is Filip Chytil's presence down there on that third line. But I'm curious to know how you feel about that. Do you think that he could be that anchor to stabilize the bottom six? Or do you think that the Rangers really need to just figure out a way to get that first line going? And so ultimately that's where he should land.
I mean, it's very clear that right now the biggest struggle, at least offensively, is that third line, where ever since Chytil got injured and then Trocheck was pulled up to the second line, it's been a couple of different people playing as the center on that third line. Nick Bonino has been there for the majority of this injury, and ever since that happened, the bottom six has been horrible, to say the least. Just they're not producing offense, they're not producing defense. Nick Bonino was not brought onto this team to play as a third line center. He was meant to be on the fourth line, not on a line that's supposed to generate offense. He was like a lockdown, like, I'm going to kill some penalties and I'm going to play defense and clear the puck type of line that they were constructing there. And it was working when the line was being used used for what it was intended for. But as soon as Bonino got pulled up there, all of that chemistry was just thrown off. Then I believe right now it's Johnny Brodzinski that's centering it. And he's been a little bit more of an improvement. I think that the lines that the Rangers have worked with throughout their last few games are the best lines that Laviolette could possibly create without Filip Chytil on the lineup. So yeah, when Filip Chytil comes back, it would make the most sense for right away to just put him in as that third line center, and then have a line of Will Cooley, Filip Chytil, and I guess Johnny Brodzinski wouldn't be there anymore. I guess it would be Gaudreau, and then have VC, Bonino, Pitlick when Pitlick returns. But I would opt to just not have Barclay Goodrow and just keep Johnny Brodzinski. You just got to buy him out or trade him away or something. But that's beyond the point. The only problem with that is, Filip Chytil is a very young, promising center. If I remember correctly, he's only like 23 or 24 years old. I believe it's 24. And, he was expected to be a top six forward. He started off this season in the top six for a reason. And Vincent Trocheck was kind of put on the back burner for the initial part of the season in order to give Chytil that chance to break out even further. Last season, he had like 45 points. If he stayed healthy this entire year on that second line, he easily could have gone beyond that to hit 60, maybe even 70 points with the way that Artemi Panarin has been playing so far this season with Lafreniere. But now the problem resides in that first line where Kreider and Zibanejad haven't really had that long-term solution on the wing there. And yeah, Kako right now, he's been playing great, in my opinion, at least. There's still a lot of people out there that don't consider Kako to be a good player, but I love the way that he's played. But they've struggled with Brodzinski, Wheeler, Othman, pretty much anyone that was put up on that first line. Kreider and Zibanejad did not mesh well with. And Chytil is just another player on that list that could potentially be moved into the top 6 in order to assume that position, at least for a little bit. It's kind of killing two birds with one stone. One, you're getting Chytil a chance up in the top 6 there. And two, you're possibly finding a solution to who plays with Kreider and Zibanejad if it works out. The only problem with it then is that Capo Caco goes back to the third line, which to me is also not even the worst thing in the world, because before he got injured, he was playing great on that third line defensively in a more defensive role. So, like I said, I think the most likely option is starting off as that third line center. Just nip the problem in the bud right away, get rid of all that bottom 6 issue, and then maybe, just maybe, if that first line continues to struggle and Filip Chytil is looking like he's about to explode and the only thing he's needing is just a little bit more ice time, that's when you elevate him up into the top 6. That's what I would do if I were Laviolette.
I mean, I like that. I think that makes sense. I mean, we'll have to see how Heedle's playing when he does return from the injury, because it's kind of, your theory there is hinging on
It is
that.
all contingent on that, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll say I think a third line of Will Cooley, Filip Chytil, and Capo Caco, it's kid line 2.0. I think that makes a lot of sense for this team. I think that really gives you a solid bottom 6, and I know that leaves you vulnerable on the first line. What is the solution there at right wing? You probably have Blake Wheeler up there at that point, which we've said enough about Blake Wheeler on this channel. I feel like I know you, Will, even Colin. I know Colin's been a Blake Wheeler advocate, but more recently we've been texting him, and even he's kind of cold on Blake Wheeler. I think we all are. But I think when you're looking at that, then you make your deal at the deadline, right? You retain somebody's salary, or you give some picks and you trade Barkley Goudreau. You figure out somebody to plug in there on that first line right wing with Zibanejad and Kreider. And then I think your Cooley, Chytil, Kako third line makes a lot of sense. And if you have to move some players around, like if you trade for a winger who's plugged in on the first line and you want to move him down into the third line here and there, I'm sure that you could possibly toy around with that depending on who you trade for. But I do believe that it is inevitable the Rangers are going to be trading for somebody. But I think that one of the underrated storylines for Filip Chytil's return is his return determines one of two things. First of all, the depth on the top 3 lines. Second of all, as we've been discussing, but second of all, the Rangers, we've been talking a lot about them trading for a winger. We haven't talked as much about them trading for a center, but that's also an option for them, is to trade for a center. But if Filip Chytil returns and he's healthy and he's playing well, then they don't need to do that at all. That's probably an afterthought, and they just focus on the right wing market. But if Filip Chytil's maybe not ready by the trade deadline, or maybe not completely healthy, or not playing well when he returns, I think center is still on the table for them to trade for. So I kind of want to hear your perspective on that, whether you kind of see where I'm coming from and agree with me, and if you think that Filip Chytil's return to this lineup will have a pretty big impact, like I think it will. I think it'll have a pretty big impact on their plans at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact because, before we knew that Chytil was likely to return this season, some of us fans, we were like a little nervous that we might not be seeing Filip Chytil for a long time. It was like his third or fourth concussion in a very short amount of time. Laviolette was not giving any direct updates on his recovery. All we just knew was that he was on pace. Like, on pace for what, Laviolette? Like, we didn't know. Then he leaves the country to go back to Czechia. At that point, I was like, all right, we got to add third line center to the list of things that we need at this year's deadline. Because, like, who knows if it was still a mystery at the point of the deadline, Drury would have to take a gamble. It's either just go out and acquire a center, and then if Chytil does come back, you just have too many centers, or if you just hope and pray that Chytil will come back, don't go out and get one, and then he doesn't come back, you're left with Nick Bonino as your third line center for the playoffs, and then you lose in the first round to the New Jersey Devils again. It's that simple. So I think it is going to have a huge impact on this, because even if he does return before the deadline, if he's not playing well, you kind of got to go out and shop for a new one. Now, the Rangers don't have a lot of cap space right now, but if you go out and acquire a more developed, solid, healthy third line center, you could throw in Filip Chytil as a part of that trade package. We both said at the beginning of the episode, Neither of us want to trade away Filip Chytil. I don't think it'll happen, but it is an option that Drury could consider because there are a lot of teams out there that, although he isn't healthy right now and might not be playing at the top of his game right now, they will try to cash in on the fact that he will be next season or soon relatively and have a chance to break out for them. That's why a few weeks ago on the channel, we'd made a discussion about Trevor Zegras, very young, promising center on Anaheim, who was likely at the time going to be on the trade block for them. And we thought, hey, if Filip Chytil doesn't come back from injury, here's a guy that the Rangers can go out and trade for. Of course, we posted that video. The next day, he like shatters his ankle or something and he's out 6 to 8 weeks. So, scratch that name off the list. But there are some names out there that the Rangers could definitely look at. And it would make their lives a whole lot easier if Filip Chytil just comes back and he's just playing really good third line center, because then they can just kind of scratch that off the list, only worry about the first line right wing and then like maybe like a cheap depth defender. But I don't know. It definitely determines a lot though, because with the limited cap space, if they want to go out and get one really solid player, so it's really all they can afford. If you're going after two players, you might just be getting two mediocre players at that point. So,
Yep. And allow me to tinker with these lines once again. I'm going to throw another mock lineup for you. And this one, I don't know how you're going to feel. I know Colin, if he was on the show right now, would not like this one. I'm going to go Kreider, Zibanejad, Kako on the first line. Second line remains the same. Cooley, Chytil, Brennan Othman. Where do you stand on it, on giving him a second chance at some point this season?
I'm still going to put my foot down and say no.
Okay.
Because although I'm not as like adamant about it as Colin, I do believe that in order to succeed the best, Othman needs consistent top 6 minutes.
All right.
What?
So, well, then how about this? Kreider, Zibanejad, Othman, second line remains the same. Cooley, Chytil, Kako.
I like that a whole lot more. I'm assuming Barclay Goodrow is the one down the 4 lines that gets the boot, or is it Blake Wheeler? Because someone's got to get kicked out of the
Yeah,
lineup.
take your pick. Take your pick. Either one of those guys.
Either one, I don't care. I'm not a fan of either of them. So yeah, I mean, I like it. I think that would be like my perfect lines envisioned for next season, because I
Yeah.
do like the idea of Brennan Othman taking the entire season to develop in the AHL and then trying to prove his case during training camp next season.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hate it. Like, I know Colin would hate it. If it happened right now and we walked into the playoffs with those lines, I'd be like, sure, like, okay. But I'm not going to be like, yes, like we're possibly rushing his development. Like, I don't know. I still think that what the Rangers have right now is enough to make a very promising run. And they should just need to trade for like one more really promising, already developed player with solid experience, playoff experience to be specific, and who can produce a lot of points. Othman, it would make me really excited to see. But to me, with a season that's as promising as this one, or was as promising, that still is. I'm not that worried. Um, I'm not that. This is fine, right? I would prefer to just not take the risk on Othman. I would just wait till next season to get him into a full time role.
That's fair. And honestly, for what it's worth, I wanted to bring it up just to kind of play a little bit of the devil's advocate, but I'm in the same boat as you. I think that Othman needs to remain in the AHL and continue to develop. However, I do think there's something to be said about if the Rangers can't get somebody at the deadline, like let's say Drury, maybe he picks up a lot of phone calls, he makes a lot of calls, just can't get a deal done for one reason or another, like nothing materializes. I think that's the red button on the White House desk, right? Like
Plan
that's
Z.
that's your last option, your last line of defense for your cup run. I think you're going to have to bring Othman up for the postseason and move those players around in one way or another. But that's kind of, like I said, that's your emergency scenario. I don't think that's very likely. I think Othman's going to stay down in Hartford, but you know, we'll see how it opens up here. You have any closing thoughts on this, Eric, about Chytil, where he's going to move into and what that might mean for them and kind of their opportunities that they may or may not have trading for somebody if Chytil returns?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going to double down on it. When we made that Zegers episode a few weeks ago, I said, even for a player like Zegras, if Filip Chytil isn't healthy, and or either that or he's back and he is healthy and he's not playing good, as much as we love him, Drury needs to at least consider the option of just moving on. If the Rangers are able to put together a team that is like just this close to making it to the Stanley Cup Finals, but they need like one last really good piece up there in the top six, and Filip Chytil's holding you back. Fans, like, I'm sorry, but you might just gotta let go of Filip Chytil, and I would be heartbroken to see him be traded away. But at the end of the day, if it's what makes you a Stanley Cup winning team, you do what you got to do. It's a business, and I hope that does. I hope that's not the case. I hope that Filip Chytil returns to the team like as soon as next week, and he scores a hat trick in his return, and then he goes point per game for the rest of the season, wins the playoff MVP trophy, and then we all go home happy. That would be the perfect world, but we'll see what happens. And fingers crossed.
Yeah, I love talking about the perfect world scenarios because unfortunately we don't live in the perfect world. So it never works out quite the way we wanted to. If it did, the Rangers never would have hit this slump. He'd still be healthy. Kako
Hey,
never
we're
got
in a
hurt.
30-year slump. Let's not forget that.
Well, that's a good point too. I mean, just the season started off so strong, and I keep saying it every time I appear on this channel and I do an episode with you. I am not worried about this team. I don't feel like there's a lack of talent. I feel like there's a lack of health. They're just so injured. Everybody's going in and out of the lineup. The defense had a lot of injuries, and they come back and they don't play the same. Same thing on the lineup. I mean, it's just so many injuries that have caused this team to really fall apart. But I still think the number one priority and objective for this team needs to be getting healthy for the playoffs, because once they are healthy and they've got that full lineup that they started the season off with, if they have that lineup in the playoffs and they hit a little stride there, nothing should stop this team. Like, they are great at their peak. It's just about getting back into peak form. A lot of that is going to be up to Laviolette, how he rests the players, how he practices the players. We praised him endlessly in the offseason for attention to detail in practices, and Panarin praised him for that as well. Lafreniere praised him for that as well, how it's very detail oriented at those practices, and there's a lot of competitions and stuff. We loved all that stuff, and we still do. I still buy into it. I still believe in Peter Laviolette, but something's got to get fixed here with all the injuries. I don't know if it's something that you want to place blame on Laviolette for, if you want to blame it just on the medical staff. I know obviously they made some sort of changes to their trainers and medical directors and after last season and the situation that they had with some injuries, but something's got to get fixed here. I do believe in this team fully healthy to make a deep postseason run, but it's really just about getting healthy and then staying healthy. I think that's the only thing. Health is really the only thing that I envision is going to realistically set this team back and keep them from achieving their potential.
I agree with you there. Don't forget, most of this season has been played with at least one player injured. Look back to those very few handful of games before the injury began. There were a whole lot of wins right there. And yeah, we've had our
Okay.
ups and downs across the season, but most of the downs have come when the Rangers are pretty injured. So hopefully Filip Chytil is able to come back. He's like the last missing piece right there. And whenever he's back, we'll finally see that lineup back at full health. And hopefully the Rangers can just live happily ever after in that perfect world. Artemi Panarin has a 200 goal season, and we win the Stanley Cup. That sounds like a good day.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? One last thing I'll say, I think Capo Kako plays better with Filip Chytil. So I think, we've talked about Kako returned. I think that once Chytil returns, Kako's play should also improve.
I do also want to say, um, I do like how Kako plays with Chytil. I think Kako himself looks a lot better there. But Will pointed out the stat to me. I believe this is the correct stat. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. When Kreider and Zibanejad play with Capo Kako, they've had the highest expected goals percentage ever since Pavel Buchnevich was traded away from the Rangers like years ago. So even though Kako ain't scoring a lot of goals on that first line, he is making Kreider and Zibanejad play like astronomically better, which is something you definitely need to factor in when you're constructing these playoff lines. Assuming we make the playoffs this year, we've been losing a lot of games, but we're still number one in the Metro. I panic sometimes.
I still think this team is going to have no problem making the playoffs, but
We'll be
again,
fine.
getting into form for the playoffs is the number one thing that we've been discussing here, and is really really going to be important to watch out for. But before we wrap up, Eric, earlier you mentioned Dark Knight Rises. I need you to rank the Dark Knight trilogy for me.
Okay, so I've only seen them all one time. Actually, no, I've seen the Dark Knight twice. And the other two I watched with you like months apart.
That's right.
But so I think, to me, I'll go from worst to best, but they're all good. They're all good. Worst, though, I would say, is Dark Knight Rises. I didn't really love that movie. It was like it was all right. Batman was just like he was just in a hole the whole time. Um, then Batman Begins at number 2. It was a great intro to Batman. And I was like, so that's how he began. And Cillian Murphy was in it. And then, The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger, iconic movie. And Rachel died. Spoilers.
Rachel. Yeah. Yeah. We have the same rankings, funny enough. I've seen all of those movies at least like 10 times. So a little bit different, but same rankings. Dark Knight Rises, Nolan was he was over it by then. If you read about it, or if you've watched any of his interviews, he was kind of done with the movies. He didn't want to keep doing them.
I know originally they intended on having Heath Ledger return as the Joker.
Yeah.
But,
so he had to rewrite that script a whole bunch. And so once he had to do all that, no, it's still a great movie. But if you compare it to the other two, I mean, I think that Batman Begins is excellent. And then obviously it's a prolific performance from Heath Ledger, and The Dark Knight is just unreal. But yeah, so we're in the same boat. But after you comment all your thoughts on Filip Chytil and the New York Rangers, let us know what you think about the Dark Knight trilogy and what movies you want to hear us review next.
Let us know if me and Anthony should make a movie review YouTube channel.
Yes, let us know. Let us know. It may exist and have been forgotten about, but maybe we'll bring it back one day if you guys are interested. But that pretty much wraps this one up.
If anyone watching can find me and Anthony's movie review channel and comment the name of it, you'll get a special shout out in the next episode.
Very special shout out. All right, that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. And make sure you go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Rangers. But without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.
And Batman.